Good morning. Welcome to Mural Backstage Pass. My name's Mark Tippin. I'm the head of learning experience for Mural, formerly services. We're excited about a brand change here that focuses more on things like Backstage Pass. So my co-host today is Haley Temple, who's the learning experience lead at Mural. And for the next 60 minutes, we're going to take you behind the scenes of a team work session. Our goal here is to help you gain confidence in using Mural in a variety of use cases. And with Mural Backstage Pass, we're broadcasting the work as it happens. It's not heavily scripted in advance. Some have a little more coordination than others. In this case, there's a little more structure, but it'll unfold in real time. And we hope that this inspires you to use your facilitation superpowers in new ways with your team. To help get the most from today's session, Haley and I are going to call attention to methods, Mural features, and best remote collaboration practices as we go. But let's do a quick round of introductions. I'm really excited about who's joining us today, Haley.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are two lovely guests have been on Backstage Pass before to talk about design sprints and building design sprint experiences online and in Mural. And we're happy to have them back to show the evolution of their approach to online facilitation and design sprints. So John, tell us a little bit about you and where you're calling it from.
Yeah, hi, John Fitch, normally in Texas, but this summer road tripped up to Northern California, so waving from the West Coast. I would say that I'm a maker, a prototyper, so the design sprint is a process that Douglas and I love facilitating, and I actually think that it's better virtually. That could be debatable, but we've also remixed it into our own process called the Design Dash and how to remix anything. But after doing a lot of design sprints, we used to have one massive canvas, a one canvas system, whereas Douglas and I, having debriefed a lot after design sprints virtually, we realized we could do better. And we're going to be talking about that. And that is a quick baton pass to Douglas.
Can hear you.
Yeah, that's it helps to not be unmuted. So good to be here. And I am a muter of mics, and I founded Voltage Control 3 years ago and have been running design sprints for quite a while, and really excited about this opportunity to reinvent the way we work. And Mural's been right there alongside this journey. And as Haley mentioned, the last time we were on Backstage Pass, we were imagining what a good Mural template would look like for a design sprint. And we had some ideas, but now we're actually at the point where we're really excited about the approach that we're taking, and it's impacted all the workshops we're doing.
Awesome. Yeah, we're happy to have you guys here. And we are going to talk a little bit about and do some activities today using this template, which I'm excited about. And I want you guys to give us an overview of this approach, the two canvas system, and we're going to actually use it today, which is great. But before we jump in, I want to ask something of the audience. So during our session today, we want to actually show you guys some examples of using the two canvas system, which means we're going to need some participants in our session to work with us. So if you are interested in being on camera, actually working in Mural and being off mute so you can chat with us and work with us, then respond in the chat with an all caps. I'm going to put heck yes. I'm going to ask you guys to respond heck yes, and I'm going to have maybe 3 people from the audience promoted to panelists, and you'll be able to work with us in a few minutes. So let us know, respond in the chat, and we'll promote some of you up to panelist. So while I'm waiting for the group to let us know, let's talk a little bit about this two canvas system. And John, tell us a little bit about it. I know we were talking about it before.
So we used to, if you're not familiar with the design sprint, it's a 5-day or so process where each day you're focused on a different domino in a prototyping process. And so we'd have this huge mural that included all the activities from Monday all the activities for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all one big canvas. Makes sense. It's a cool part about Mural. Whereas not only did we realize that mural was massive and trying to help people orient themselves was a frequent challenge, we realized that, wait, this is not how we would do it in person. And we just asked the question, what would we do virtually that matches in person? And so we said, well, we would have a supply room or a supply box. Well, let's make one of our mural canvases our supply room. So we built out a template that has all of the supplies organized, whereas our design room, our actual participation room, is very simple. Each person has a placemat, just like in a real room. Each person has their little section of a table in front of them. And then we have a whiteboard. So that way participants are only focused on their little placemat and the group whiteboard. Whereas we as facilitators, Douglas and I, or you and one of your other co-facilitators, is able to oscillate between your supply room and bring things into the participants so that, again, if you think about awesome user experience, it's making it easy for your participants to participate because they only have to focus on one or two things, whereas the facilitators take on all the weight of knowing all of the details and supplies. Douglas, is there anything I missed there?
Yeah, I'll just point out that I think this is what we found was we and everyone had gravitated toward these really large, elaborate murals because we wanted it to tell a story. We wanted to have this product or artifact out of the end of our workshop. And that's really, really important. And we're not saying get rid of that. We're saying do that separately. We don't, because there's this really a big concern around cognitive overload with your participants. And so if we show them the whole thing and they're in there and distracted and having to consider all the things that are there, then they maybe aren't putting forth their best efforts in the moment, in the activity in front of them. So imagine that you walked into a room with the whiteboard and some chairs and a table, and you proceeded to write everything up on the whiteboards that we were going to do the whole day, the whole week, and great detail. You just wouldn't do that, right? I mean, there might be a small outline, but so we're really trying to model the best practices that we take to end real life meetings, and so that was the real spirit of what we're doing. Now, the thing is we highly encourage you to still create that recap deck, that story, that narrative. Just collect everything that's been done throughout the week into that artifact, and then you have that beautiful story kind of waiting. You can just drop those into another mural that has that arc, that beautiful journey that people can reflect on.
Well, I love that deep thinking, that approach that you take to this stuff, and the not assuming that it should be the way it is. If you think about facilitation superpowers like Summon, and they're there because people get lost, right? So, you come in and fly at a different angle at it and say, well, what if you couldn't get lost, right? I mean, that's design thinking in and of itself. Just reframe what good looks like or what a potential outcome should be. So love that.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's really nice because when you're on orientating, we always like to do an orientation before we do a workshop so that folks can learn the process. And now they have to learn Mural as well, because a lot of our participants have never seen it before. And so if all they need to do is learn how to find their location and then the group work activity. So where's their seat at the table? To have a metaphor back to like the in real life stuff, and then they have to find the whiteboard. So where's the group work activity? They orient to those two things, and then they're good for the rest of the workshop. And the only thing they have to worry about are the instructions for the activity, so they're not distracted by other types of wayfinding and orientation.
That's right.
So, and do you mind if I just orient myself to like it? So if I'm a participant, I would only, so like for example, I have my sprinter name here. And so a whole time I'm just committed to this little placemat area. And then as a facilitator, a participant would only see this mural. I'd only be in this mural the whole time. And as the facilitator, I'm going back and forth between these tabs, or like if I have multiple screens, I might have one on a different screen where I can just copy and paste this content in for the group.
That's right. And you might want to scroll up a little bit to give a visual on where the instructions would drop in. So we'll see we have a banner at the top where the days go in. So we usually start with nothing highlighted for orientation because the workshop hasn't started. And then we'll drop in a new banner for each day. And then the instructions get replaced. So instead of it saying orientation, it might say the goal. Yeah.
So you might remove these, for example?
Yeah. So I would delete that
them?
entire row. Yeah. Delete that entire row. Yeah. And then go over to your supply room. And then copy your Monday row.
That is awesome. Okay. So
and I usually shift click to drag to create an entire selection. But yeah, there you go. Now we're on Monday.
Nice. Okay. And Mark, I apologize. What were you gonna?
Oh no, I was just going to say I was thinking about even in the physical workshops, right? There's a process where you might only introduce yellow Post-it notes to do an introduction exercise, and you don't hit them with all the rose thorn bud colored note. You don't hit them with everything all at once, right? You do this kind of progressive reveal, get them comfortable, and so that the learning steps happen. You kind of sprinkle them throughout the course as they're needed, as opposed to some big mega super brief that everyone has to, which is the waterfall mentality that we're trying to get away from too, right? Here's my big spec, read this and learn this whole thing, and then we'll go execute in a linear fashion. This is such a wonderful fluid way to have the parts ready. You're thoughtful about what the facilitator's job is, and you're also thoughtful about the focus on the participants. So great balance.
100%. And I would love the ability to say that participants can only create yellow stickies of this size. And then I, as a facilitator, can, because you don't walk into the room and throw out like 15 different colors with different sizes. Right. There's usually some notion around constraints, so that then the real decisions they're making are around truly innovating on what's possible versus like having, and also when we're sorting and filtering, we're not having to think about like, is there meaning behind this red color versus this green color? And like, that's extra cognitive load. And so my dream is that as facilitators, we'd have some control over that. And I think, one day we'll see that.
Yeah. Well, I would just to the point John made earlier about the facilitators taking on the burden. And I think that's what we're looking at in Mural with facilitation superpowers, was this first kind of intentional branching around a user versus someone who is willing to take on more a deeper understanding. And if anything, we're seeing a desire for even a further separation where facilitators can then limit the amount of UI. And I think the pressure in software development is always to give more features. And in this case, I think you want to give more features to the people that understand how to create the best experience. But part of their increased capability is actually to minimize the access to certain things to create that focus and cut down on that cognitive load.
That's right. And right now what we do is when we're moving from a generative phase or step in an activity to a more convergent phase. So we're moving from divergent to convergent. Then we would basically, as a facilitator, start to organize, select them, make the colors consistent, the sizes consistent. And because at the end of the day, a lot of your participants, especially if you're dealing with a really big group, and different levels of experience, you'll inevitably have someone that's zoomed in really close and they're creating tiny stickies. Someone's zoomed out really far. So it's really important as you're massaging the board, bringing in new activities, bringing people along to different steps, that you're resizing and kind of making things consistent so that the sorting is much easier on the brains.
Absolutely.
We have a great question from Mara Moore. Cool name. Each person has a placemat, but we'll soon, now that we have our crew here, we'll be able to show you that yes, each person has a placemat, and then at the top of the participation canvas there is a group work area, and we'll be diving in here momentarily.
Yeah. So thank you guys for I think this is helpful to get that context and overview for sure in terms of the theory and the concept behind like attention and helping like a progressive reveal experience for participants just to manage attention. So yeah, in the meantime, and this is the beauty of working with experienced facilitators like you guys, I also promoted 4 people from the audience, and there's some familiar faces from our Control the Room family here on the call. So we have Linda, we have Jonathan, we have Jay, and we have Mike. Mike, yes, thank you. And so what I've done is invited them. Hey, Mike, I've invited them into the mural. And I'm going to ask you guys, what you're already doing, is to put your names onto one of these sprinter name placements.
I'm co-facilitator. I'm a step ahead for you.
There you go.
Oh.
Rock and roll.
Yeah, and Haley, usually we'll do that as preparation before the design sprint, because we'll know our participant names. We'll come in and we'll update those, and that creates a little bit, especially if folks aren't familiar with Mural. That's one hurdle they don't have to jump through. They just have to locate their name, and then there's never that moment where 2 people are trying to click on the same thing. So we try to set it up and make it as easy as possible for the participants. And Linda Baker will love this call out around the definition of facilitation is to make easy. And so anything we can do to make it easier on our participants, we're going to go above and beyond to do that.
And Linda, I know Linda was saying she's having a trouble getting in, so let me just help her navigate really quickly. So I'm going to share the link again for you, Linda.
Oh my God, my face. Okay, thank you.
And I'm going to put it into the Zoom chat.
Yeah, one little detail I'm going to add. I was doing it, but if you get your hands on this template and want to start using it, let's say next week, everything we have is unlocked initially, because as a facilitator, you may be editing in there. And so after I put our participants' names in their sandbox, in their working area, I grouped and then locked it, because I made the mistake of not doing that. And when then people are trying to create stickies, they end up grabbing the working area and get very confused.
Yeah, so here, like the sprinter name that's open, but that's a great best practice to call out, John, is to lock it down if you don't want people to move it. Mm-hmm. All right.
I cannot get in. So I'm glad that you want people to have real live experiences. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to pretend that I'm a real live experience. I had 2 accounts in Mural.
Okay.
And, when I logged in on one that I hadn't been in for 15 days. And so I got deactivated from that.
Oh, no. Okay.
So I'm just pretending. So I'm giving you an opportunity to teach something.
I appreciate always giving us teachable moments. So I don't want to have to reactivate you right now during the session. So I'm going to give you the visitors link.
That's great. And I love that you now in Mural can give yourself a name as an anonymous hippopotamus. You could.
Yes.
I love that. That's a really awesome feature.
Well, I think
I'll say this. It's optional, and so for all of you listening out there, please do type in a name, because it really helps your facilitator give you a better experience.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was going to say, in general, we're all of us in the tools business, the tools and experience business, are learning. If for those of you that use Zoom, every week is like a new user experience in there where things are now optional and they're new checkboxes. So we're all finding our way in what's the right balance of transparency and integrity and flexibility. And again, I think this is where we skew towards giving the power to the facilitator and say, like, that's either something that you allow or don't allow, depending on the context. Because sometimes, you want to keep it fun and encourage people to do that. And sometimes, you're dealing with a large crew where you don't know everyone that's there and you don't want imposters and that kind of thing. So we're all finding our way and trying to find that right balance in these tools. So I think it'll just keep evolving.
All right, we have Linda's in, and she's the visiting RAM. So now that our crew's here, I'm going to throw some confetti, because this just feels great to have everyone here.
Nice.
That's right. So mention how that's a facilitation feature too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if I'm a facilitator, I have this little star on my avatar to designate that, and I can throw confetti anytime I want to celebrate a moment. So I'm going to try and use sparingly, as much as I love the feature. I don't want to reduce its power, the power of the confetti.
That's right.
try and use it like fine china. Or use it as much as you want.
That's right.
So now that we have our crew together, everyone has a space to work in the participant mural. We have canvas number 1 ready. Now, John, how do I which activity are we starting with?
Yeah, we're going to start with the long-term goal, but we're going to be doing this kind of like a cooking show, how the casserole is like already baked.
Yes.
I'm just going to take it out of the oven rather than us sit here and do the full activity. But as a facilitator, you would go into the supply room, grab the instructions. So that whole long-term goal section there.
Okay.
Yeah, you would just copy that and then paste it into the participation mural. And you may have to resize it. So I'd get rid of that current one that's there.
Okay, this need context.
Yeah. We would get rid of that. And then
let me just deselect that. And I put it here. I'm going to make it a little smaller, like you said.
A little smaller. Nice.
And then again, I'm going to lock it down.
Perfect. And so that would be your first step as a facilitator. And again, we've provided the steps there in the amount of time that we would recommend. We're going to do a fast-forwarded version. But essentially what would happen here is each participant would be creating stickies for what they think the goal of our sprint that we're going to build a prototype for is. Rather than doing that, I've already pre-selected some that, again, this is imagining each one of you participants would have selected one, would have curated one. These are actually all awesome sustainability goals that Haley and I curated from, I think it's the UN, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Awesome. So all of these are absolutely incredible goals. We need to be working on these. And so Haley, right now we're going to fast forward to the last moment of our sprint step, and we're just going to vote on these 6. So let's go ahead and give each person, Douglas, should we give them 2 votes, 3 votes to make things interesting? You have a preference?
Are we trying to pick one? We're trying to pick one goal, yeah?
Yeah, one goal.
I would give them 1 vote then.
1 vote. So what we're going to do, Haley, is run a voting session. There, she's already on it.
I got you. This is like, we got each other. We're good.
We're good. Speaking of that, me and Douglas and what you're seeing it live now, co-facilitation is really important, especially for a very involved experience like a design sprint. Okay, participants, you are going to pick the one of the 6. One goal of the 6 that you think it has to be our first domino. It's got to be the first thing we prototype and work on.
Hey, John, how much time do you think she should put on the timer?
30 seconds.
Ooh, okay.
Pressure.
Man, we need some Jeopardy music for that kind of pressure.
I know.
You can only pick one.
All right, 30 seconds on the timer, and I can actually see who is voting and who's already voted. So Shay's voted, Mike, John.
Douglas, you can vote.
Oh yeah, go for it, Douglas.
I voted.
You're good, you're good.
I voted.
All right. Should I vote?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna.
Yes.
I should vote?
Come on.
Okay.
Come on. Your opinion matters.
Okay, here we go.
Although I feel bad for this one that doesn't have a border. I feel like it kind of got left out.
Yeah, I don't know where the borders came from either. We have the luxury of having some mural pros in here too, which is great. All right, so 3 votes. The top one is urgent action is needed by regulating emissions and promoting renewable energy.
Awesome.
Woo-hoo! All right, that is our top topic.
So that's going to, what we can do is just put that up at the top left of the group work area as a reminder.
Okay.
And then as Douglas mentioned, we suggest that you have a 3rd mural, which is like your archive room. And this would be a great moment to take the existing artifacts that didn't make it into the goal. You would save all those and paste in kind of your archive for use later for your client or for yourself to revisit. But then guess what? We get to take our eraser, clean the whiteboard, and we're back to a fresh, calm state.
That's nice.
And so now what we're going to do is move on to a new exercise. So Haley, as as a facilitator is going to.
Hey, John, can I jump in with a quick pro tip there real fast?
Absolutely.
Not only will you be erasing the whiteboard, you'll be cleaning up the desks too. So a lot of times there's solo work that generated a lot of stickies down in the participant area. And you can literally just drag a box and select across the entire range and grab those. I like to archive those things because some clients will want to see, well, I want to see all the ideas. And it's like, okay. So then we'll have all that stuff saved off per activity. So it's really clear because sometimes it's shorthand and things. So
an example, did that here I have an archive mural just to show what that would look like. I cut everything from the room. I'll put it back so our participants, if they want them, can have them back, but just for good reference. It's all in here. Okay, I love that idea too. Like along the same time you're collecting that. All right, so we did the long-term goals. We have a fresh group work area. Our team has organized their space. So back in the supplies room.
Awesome. We're going to do sprint questions next.
Okay, so let me go ahead and, I need to unlock this.
I was going to say this is also super meta because John and Douglas, you've built templates and you're almost doing a think aloud testing with Haley as a facilitator, adopting and seeing how it works.
Yeah, it's making me realize that we designed it, Mark, with one of our mantras in mind, which is like have more than one facilitator. Make sure you have a co-facilitator. And so when we're doing this live for a client, Douglas may be the one grabbing stuff from the supply room while I'm answering questions, debriefing the last exercise, making sure people have clarity. And so it's more seamless once you have two, whereas Haley's being very brave right now, doing it all alone. Hats off to you, Haley.
Team member, always, but I appreciate it. All right, so, and it's hard to juggle both for sure. So that's why co-facilitators are key, but I do have the sprint questions from the supply closet out here. So
awesome.
Are we on Monday or would this be in a different day? What day would you?
We're still on Monday.
Cool. Okay.
So participants in your working area, in your little gold area of genius, you are going to generate stickies. This is a time for you to be pessimistic. We have this amazing goal that we're going to create urgent action and regulate emissions and promoting renewable energy. That's going to be a serious mission. There's going to be things in the way. So this is a moment to turn on your due diligence hat, your mindset of thinking about how this is not going to work, but you're going to do it in the form of questions. So these are like questions of being dubious on our goal. So generate as many stickies as you would like. Haley, we'll just put 1 minute on the timer.
Okay.
And participants in your area just create stickies around questions that you have that are through the lens of how this might not work. What are going to be our challenges?
And while they're doing that, John, I had a quick question. I noticed the team did this and I was starting to do this. It's helpful to have the goal at the top of their placemat.
I think that's wonderful.
So they can just, for me too, it's like, okay, when I'm in an in-person session, I need to look back at that goal and reference it so I don't forget. And then when you're introducing the prompts, so do you usually ask the group to follow you and review the instructions here, or do you let them stay at their placements? Which one do you recommend? Usually
what I do is just let them, and it takes a few reps, right? By the third or fourth exercise of the design sprint, they become accustomed to the room, just like you have to get used to a room that you're in. And I'll just make it known that new instructions have been placed at the top. This is where you find instructions. So I just make sure that they know where it's at, and if they need to reference on their own, they can do so. Is the way we go about it. And I'm repetitive on when the timer goes out and we're about to go into the next exercise. I'll just again reference. All right. Oh, and actually, this gave me an idea. Speaking of Mark's point of this is real-time QA, is maybe we could use a line, like literally the line tool, to just cross out, hey, we finished step 1 and now we're going on to step 2. Like actually there in the instructions.
Okay.
Like in a strike through. Nice. Exactly.
And there's a keyboard shortcut for those that haven't discovered it already. If you hold the C as in Charlie key down and click and drag, it'll create whatever your last line was. If it's a single-headed arrow, double-headed arrow, just a straight line segment. And if you change the properties of it, it's very nice. The properties are sticky now. So if you make it a thick line, a thick dash, red line, all that stuff, whatever the last state is, will now become the same state moving forward.
That's awesome. That's a great tip. So yeah, that's something I didn't even think about, but now I'm going to do that moving forward, just having that strike through. But yeah, I find that I try to remove any guilt I have on being repetitive in the first, call it hour or 2 hours of the design sprint. It's about getting the reps in, the training, so that by the time we're on Tuesday, everyone's very familiar with the room. And if they ever need anything, they know where to reference that.
Nice.
Great. Well, our time is up. So what I'm going to have is each participant, if you are going to select 2 questions, some of you generated around 6 or 5, choose 2 and bring them up to the whiteboard area, the gray group work area. So you're going to select 2 of them and bring them up to the group work area. So for those watching, here's a moment where we let each participant generate ideas, and now we're inviting them to curate. So a bit of sense making and prioritization. And then here's a quick question, Haley. I noticed this is more of I'm seeking advice from you as a facilitator. Yeah. Participants, I love that they have fun creating different colored stickies, different size stickies. But sometimes when people drop that into the group work area, I'm trying to quickly make sure they're at least all of the same size, meaning one person's giant sticky doesn't take all the attention.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips on how to quickly do that?
That's a softball question, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's wonderful though.
Yes, we do.
I can show it. So 2 things, absolutely. So let's say, someone made a sticky note that was really big. Of course, it's always helpful to orient people to the navigating in and out in Mural, so they don't feel like, oh, I can't see, my sticky note's too small. But what you can do is when you can select all of the sticky notes that you have in the space by holding down Shift and dragging. And then this menu bar comes up here, and you can either reset it to the default size or to the largest or smallest sticky note. Nice. And then I can put them into a grid so it's all organized and handy, or just keep it in this beautiful collection we've made. Another thing I also want to mention is you can make sticky notes the color of your avatar, which is something new to me. But so my avatar, for example, is this forest green color, which I love. I did not choose that, but I have it under my custom colors. So if you want to color code stuff, like Jonathan, you're this kind of yellowy mustard color. That's also like a nice fall tone. You can make yours this mustard color. So
awesome, Haley. Well, thanks for showing those.
Haley, I just wanted to double stitch on that a little bit. You resized them to be the same size, but 2 of them are still different. Maybe help folks understand what that's about.
Yeah, so they were created in Mural, or the participants made them. That you can either do a 3x3 or a 3x5. So the participants, when they generated the sticky notes, made them that size. So a good practice might be to either, when you're making, you can resize them, where if you highlight all of them again, you can make them all 3x5 or all 3x3 or all a text box. So there's a lot of flexibility there. Or if you, for example, want everybody to have the same shape sticky note, a good practice might be just putting some of those same size sticky notes into their placemat area. So if that's something that you feel like I want everyone to have the same size, you can also do that and set it as out front as a preventative measure. So yeah, it's kind of like if you brought your supplies into your room and you're like, I only want everyone to use these size sticky notes, you'd only provide them, right? So
Nice. I think Linda has a question.
Yeah, a quick one. I really love the recoloring your stickies to match the color of your avatar. And I have recolored and added colors, but I'm wondering if you could do a very quick, explanation. I think this would be helpful to show us how to do that, because I think that that's a really powerful way to connect and engage participants with being present on a mural in a way in which is very unique. And sometimes I think it's a great way to overcome the massive sticky note chaos, but actually to see your own color, or to know that, oh, see that little Aries ram down there? It's the same color as
yes.
So could you show that very, very quickly, please?
Of course, yeah, it's a sense of identity in a big sea of sticky notes. So I mentioned, and you don't get to choose the colors of your avatars at the moment, but mine is this forest green color. And you can see that from my picture right here at the bottom of the screen. So when I click on a sticky note I want to change, I get a pop-up menu, and one of the options is to change the color. So we have our default colors, but you'll see under this custom color section, there's one color that's specifically round, and that it says is my avatar color. So when I click on it, it will change mine to this forest green color. And now throughout any of the other activities, I can use this as my key. Like anything I've added that's my content is this color.
So this is a new feature that the circle does match your avatar color. It's a little bit, but the older feature is that you actually could create custom colors. And I thought that I was doing the old-fashioned eyedropper, where I was clicking on my RAM to get it to be that maroon color. But in fact, now I see that I actually had done it correctly, even though I didn't know I was doing it correctly. Yet another Mural. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and here's the hexadecimal color for reference too. So.
Hey Haley, while we're on colors, is it okay to share a tip that I've learned from both Sabre and teaching in SMU?
Yeah, Jay, please.
So one of the colors that we reserve, and I love it because it's the bright pink of Mural, is we reserve the bright pink sticky note to either be three things: big customer insights as we're going through activities, big pain points, or themes. So you're always clustering. So when you cluster all sorts of different sticky notes, if you reserve the pink sticky notes to be these three things: big customer insights, pain points, or themes, then when you go back to your artifact later on, you seek out those pink sticky notes as kind of overarching information points for your report that then you can share. And those just are reserved colors. And that has worked out fantastically, because later on when we go and we see clusters, we look for those pink sticky notes to give us insights for the reports that we're going to share with our customers or our clients.
So awesome. And you have a fan. Annette Shaked said she uses the same thing. So the neon coral is the one to use, I guess. That's awesome.
Nice.
I was just going to double stitch on that. This notion of on the fly synthesis, as much as you can, we have a mantra that do the work in the meeting, rather than having a retrospective or another meeting where we go do the synthesis. As much as the synthesis that we can program in the moment, is the better. Right. And so to Jay's point, like we're not scanning this whole thing and trying to pick stuff out of it later. We're on the fly marking stuff. So any sort of visual cue you can do to make sure stuff's important, and whatever themes or categories are important to you, it's good to plan for that and design it into the experience.
The other, and I'll riff again, and I'll try to be brief because you guys know I'm a talker, but what's great is you can train your customers instead of having like a parking lot. You can train your customers in the real world to say, "Oh my God, I have an insight. I got put it on a pink sticky." Right? So that way you can keep moving forward on your exercise. And then you have these customers that are like me that have all these things they want to say, and you'll see them build up like a stack of pink sticky notes, but you're not interfering with the exercise, and you're capturing all of their thoughts on the fly, because sometimes customers forget, right, as you move forward, and you lose those big insights or pain points or the things that you want to capture. So it's worked out great. The power of the pink sticky is amazing. So
that's wonderful.
You know, I love Ben's comment here around using custom brand colors when facilitating with the client. So then it's like a little identity moment too.
Yeah, absolutely. I threw from another class I taught a visual, Haley, if you want just to peek in that corner, because I think sometimes people aren't aware that the default state of the objects in Mural are just the beginning. So what I have down the side are, from the noun project, by default, you get a black colored icon, you get a standard sticky, you get a title, and you get a text box. But each one of these, when you look at color and alpha channel and transparency and text alignment, and you start combining all this stuff together, even background color, the same object in Mural can look quite different based on how you start working with these properties. Now, again, that's too much to expect participants to get into noodling with all that stuff. But as you're thinking about trying to create lightweight murals that have visual impact, really interesting to note, like even the text box, you can mix weight, bold and italic and color within the text box, whereas the title, you can't. It's these, but the title works a little bit differently. Text boxes, wrap text and everything. So I just invite people to see and go back to it later on your own time and tinker with these objects, because there's a lot of variety there, especially when you get into alpha colors.
All right, I've added in pink sticky notes that we will do a backstage pass on color. I think we could nerd out easily for an hour on color and layering, and it would be the best time ever, honestly. So what I'm going to do is actually, if you guys don't mind, and being mindful of activities and stuff like that and showing the progress, I'm going to put this stuff in our workshop summary archive, and I can share all of this. Boom. And this as well. And then I'm going to bring us back to our presentation or working mural and ask you, John. So we had the group, just a reminder, we had the group color code their sticky notes, their 2 questions they wanted to highlight and bring into focus. And what do we do with these now?
Now we'll do a quick voting session, and each person is going to have 2 votes for this. Again, these numbers are we're freestyling them, whereas based on an actual sprint with full participant numbers, there's an actual recommended voting amount to help you get. But trying to get to around 3 or 5 questions to focus your entire sprint on. Your prototype should help you. Your prototype at the end of the design sprint should help you get an awesome answer to these top questions.
Okay, so how many votes should I give and how much time?
2 per person, and let's make it fast. We'll do 30 seconds.
Okay, so while I'm setting this up, our participants, please read through the questions.
2 that are really important for us to answer. But another tip I give as a facilitator is, again, we would know the mechanisms of the design sprint, like some questions that maybe a design sprint can't answer, but potentially we could seek the answer through a prototype. So keep that top of mind as you select your 2.
Oh, and let me set the timer.
Yeah, just quick 30 seconds.
All right. And I'll see who's voting. I'll vote as well.
I was going to say, there's a question that comes up all the time in these, these moments of individual work. It's like music or not music,
Mm-hmm.
and I personally, I don't think there's a definitive answer. I think it has to do with, as a facilitator, the level of energy, kind of the serious versus fun spectrum. But I was wondering if, for facilitators on here, are you pro or con music in individual work sessions time?
So I'll throw a story. When I was in the real world, I was in a session where the gals did not want to be in the session. They didn't want us in the room, and that happened for about 50% of the workshops we did. But I brought in my 80s music, and one gal who didn't want to be in there, she didn't want to participate. She goes, "Well, at least the music's good." And so for her, the music, actually, she was bouncing around dancing to the music. So for her, it was kind of a gentle warming up to us.
Mm-hmm.
So, but to your point, some people like silence when they're thinking about things. So I think you have to ask. I think you just ask your participants and say, "Do you want music? Do you not want music?" And that's my general rule of thumb. So 2 cents.
Cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's lovely. Thanks, Jay.
Mike and Susanna are pro music. Chris said music as long as it's guitar, synth, pop playlist. So we need some playlist curation in here. Thanks for asking that, Mark. I think it's important for facilitators to share that kind of stuff too. And for voting, for reference, our top voted topic question was, what is the incentive for individuals to obey regulations and renewable energy?
One, Haley.
Nice.
I did. I can't take credit. I think this was Jonathan's that I just used for demoing color. So I couldn't get the mustard color.
So that's awesome.
So just a tip too, those last 3 sticky notes were kind of the same, and you divided out the votes between 6. I would have put a pink sticky there and said, vote on the pink sticky, because those are kind of about enforcement, right? All 3 of those.
These 2. Oh, okay. Yeah. I see what you mean.
So you have to be careful, because you can actually, that vote might have been 6. And if you divide up votes among things that are kind of similar, it can give you false positives about where people want to go, right?
That's a great point.
Into syntax.
I have a question building on that, Jay, because this is a process that I don't usually work with. And so I think John didn't, or Douglas didn't choose to do it that way. And I'm wondering if there are what their thinking was in not doing it that way. Because I thought the same thing, like I started to automatically, in a very inappropriately controlling way, started to put things that seemed to be similar together, hoping that
so Linda, let me address that. So John did mention it was a cooking show, or moving really fast. In fact, we got another activity that we're hoping to get to. And we didn't do that in the spirit of we're teaching people the 2 canvas system, not how to run a design sprint. So you're right. There would have been a synthesis moment where we're combining and looking and letting the team decide what is duplicates, what's not. And it's important for the facilitator not to do that, in my opinion, because there may be nuance that the team is seeing that I don't see. And if I just step in and say, these are the same, I just blew away all that nuance that could be really important to them.
That's valid as well, Douglas. I think knowing the team you're working with is really important, as much as possible.
I added that as a tip.
I think in general too, Mural makes it easy to vote, but facilitators need to balance that with the discussion. Like Mural doesn't prompt you like the old Nintendo Wii used to. You play a game for a while and it would put up a graphic of an open window and said, why don't you take a break and go play outside, right? What game system ever does that anymore, right? But facilitators are there to balance out the feature with the need to actually unpack that and discuss.
Right. All right, crew. So we have time check, 10 minutes to rock and roll. We have something to cook. As Linda said, let's get it in the oven. So what is our last activity?
Okay, awesome. It's going to be called How Might We?
Okay.
Or the expert interviews is also referenced in the supply room. And so what I'm going to do is act as if I am an outside party in this design sprint. So let's say Linda was the decider of this actual design sprint. She's leading up this future of future of sustainable energy grid startup. And she reached out to me as a consultant, or maybe I'm a startup founder in a sustainable supply chain company. They would bring me in for 45 minutes or so, 30 minutes or so, and ask me a lot of questions. So right now, Jay, Linda, and the rest of the participants are going to interview me as an expert in sustainability. And as they interview me and the answers I have, they will generate how might we statements. So if I say something that's really intriguing, interesting, that gets you excited, if you think about how might we as a Mad Lib, it's really an invitation of possibility. How might we blank? And so as you all interview me, any moment you're inspired by that invitation into possibility in your placemat area, create how might we's. And what we did in our supply room is already generated a bunch of them, because this is I and Douglas can add to this. I find that in how might we's, for some reason, participants, unless we already give them stickies, a lot of them, they'll just sit there and interview and nod their head like, oh, cool, I'm listening to this expert or specialist discuss. Whereas I find putting, 6, 8, 10 stickies in their placemat, it kind of says, hey, we need you to generate a bunch of them. So that's a reasoning behind why we created that in the supply list, because it kind of shows each participant on their placemat, hey, we want you to generate a good amount of them.
So, John was talking about that in a kind of meta sense, but you could imagine giving your participants a very similar dialogue, except, instead of talking about the participants, you're talking with them, to them. And meanwhile, Haley was getting the board all set up and transformed. And so right when he was wrapping up, she was almost done. And so that's why having two facilitators can be really great, because you can coach them, kind of explain, set expectations. Meanwhile, the board's getting reset behind the scenes. And when you're done, boom, they look over and they're ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, we're ready to roll. And it is so helpful to have that already set up. And then I just put it on their placemat and ungroup everything, because it was grouped together to be easy to transport. But now that it's ungrouped, the participants can actually start adding their how might we questions onto the space. So and I'm being mindful of time, I want to give us about, it might even be something as like a one question that they can ask you and generate a how might we statement. So we are, again, to set some context, thinking about enforcing standards around regulating emissions and promoting renewable energy. So I'll turn it to our participants. What questions do you have for the great John Fitch, an expert in sustainable energy and renewable resources?
I'll begin.
Yeah,
I'm Jonathan. Hey, John. How might we, or I don't know, I'm doing how might we yet, but is there a reality where we can have a Mr. Fusion type of fuel like in Back to the Future 2, or is that still fiction from the 1980s?
Yeah, Jonathan, as I see it, I think if we just look at physics and the great physicist, I don't know many popular physicists today that are on the bleeding edge that are popular. They're not popular figures. I think there's an amazing podcast by the intellect Eric Weinstein, who has a podcast called The Portal, where he is interviewing these next Einsteins. But if you look at all of the technology we interact with today, it is literally the product of breakthroughs decades and decades and decades ago. We basically have physicists who came up with the breakthroughs for semiconductors, which now are powering what we see now. And so the fact that you brought up this sci-fi future, there are people right now not only discussing its potential, there's research papers on ResearchGate. And I think my biggest question is, how do we make today's physicists that are working on these things actively as cool as celebrities? Because if all of our attention was on some of these breakthroughs, maybe those individuals would get the appropriate funding, And I think that whatever it is you do, know that there is no lack of people that are actually working on that technology. We just need to make sure to have them in our consortium as we move forward.
Awesome.
That was a bunch of fancy words trying to sound.
That was epic. No, thank you. Linda, go ahead.
John, I'm really grateful that you're here today because I'm very concerned about a lot of the disparity between levels of understanding of this critical issue. And I'm wondering if you could help us in terms of some of the branding and marketing and communication information sharing globally around how to educate the masses of people that need to be educated in order for us to really work towards enforcement. Can you give us some insights about that as an expert?
Yeah, there's this philosophy in product development that I've been humbled by to understand, and it's that no one really gives a damn about your product. They just care about the superpower it gives them. And so I think we make a responsive applications based on your web browser or mobile device. I challenge marketing and content teams to think about responsive content, meaning your message to someone in Brooklyn, New York is going to be different than someone who lives in New Delhi versus someone who lives in Greece. And so to think about the different audiences and really make the message tailored to their needs, to the things they care about. For example, in Austin, Texas, all of a sudden everyone started caring about water quality when we had a zebra mussel outbreak, which makes all of your water smell like poo-poo water. And literally everyone all of a sudden is like, why does my water seem contaminated? Then people really started to care. And so I think making things very personal is how you get people's attention rather than a blanketed approach.
Thank you.
And scene. Thank you, guys. That was perfect. So I want to be mindful. So first of all, thank you, John, for being our expert. I want to give us a moment. We're asking for those in the audience to share feedback about today's session. And if you can put that in the chat and explain why you gave that rating for the session and any topics you'd love to hear later on. And then I do want to take some time in the 2 minutes we have to quickly ask for feedback from our participants who were in the session and doing this about using this approach to this session in terms of how is it having a placemat, a single space to work versus having the whole journey laid out and like using this 2-canvas system. How is it for you guys from a participant perspective? And Mike, I mean,
yeah,
I'm gonna start with you if you don't mind.
Yeah. So it felt very very clear. Not a lot of clutter. I think very few distractions. It was very easy for me to focus.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you. Jonathan, I know you said you were going to unmute yourself. Go for it.
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing. This is my first time using Mural and felt very comfortable. Yeah, it wasn't a problem at all.
Mm-hmm. Yay. Anything that you would give feedback about? All of you, I like Jay, you facilitate, Mike, you facilitate, Linda, facilitators, anything you would share that we could improve about this template as a participant?
So I'll just riff on what Douglas did. I said giving teams or individuals a space to work and collect their work is critical. And then telling that overarching story in another board, I think, is genius. That is a fantastic method that I've been using, and it seems to work again. And I love the idea of having your storage room where you can just drag and drop and grab stuff. That's pure genius, guys. Wonderful. That's my takeaway from this. And we were already kind of thinking that as well, but I love just having that storage room there available and very organized. So great job.
Yeah. Thank you guys. And huge. Oh, I didn't get to, first of all, I almost forgot. I want to do the confetti.
Got a confetti. I have to jump. I just wanted to say thank you very much for everyone. Linda, Jonathan, Mike, Jade, John, Douglas, fantastic session. I learned so much, and I'm going to hack the bejesus out of this multi-canvas session.
And thanks to all of you at Mural. You have a lot of people using your product all day. So thanks for all the hard work.
Yeah, thank you, Haley and Mark, for continuing to do these things. These are amazing. So you guys are awesome.